So I think I shouldn't be forgetting almost about anything. With that said, let me check the audio, because I think that is the only thing I have left to do. I said, well, at the very least, because I'm here, I also remember that I can try to get the link over here. Man, what an smooth audio we have compared to before. I still get amazed by this. Ah, man. Well, very fine, very fine. Let me post this over here. Let me also pin. Okay, here we are. I think with this we are not forgetting about anything else. So, yeah, as always, ignore all of these things that have happened. And wow, welcome everybody. Once again, here we are on this beautiful land of ours, talking, enjoying being here, streaming and doing similar content, because once again we have found something to do. We have discovered almost a need for being here, and we have also realized it is necessary for us to get on this beautiful place for the sake of doing some content, for the sake of analyzing some more videos, for the sake of existing and prevailing with our efforts. So yeah, very nice, as always. And well, as always also, hello, welcome everybody. Welcome beautiful lurkers, bot watchers, in this particular case, Pomatiap. And yeah, hello everybody. As always, thanks for being here. As I said, we're going to be doing something in particular. I think I didn't say what. That is to try and consume some beautiful, let's say, classes, or well, not some. Continue with the second part of what we left last time. Did I pin this? Did I pin? Is it pinned? What the hell did I do? I think it was pinned. I will guess. So yeah, basically that's it. Basically, let me now, with all of this said, let us properly get into the place of studying. Let me change my scene here and here. And yeah, we were all around the middle of the last class. We left because, quote unquote, sadly, I forgot somehow that we needed to not make it so long. And because of that, it was that we ended up being a whole hour and a quarter more simply commenting the first half of this class. I guess, in a sense, I understand why it happens. It gets interesting to see what could be added to all the things that are said over the different things, different ideas that are talked about, and so on and so forth. So yeah, it isn't something painful or anything negative like that. So yeah, very nice. But now let me also mute this. Thank God I didn't start with this. Mute, also activate the sound of the desktop, and we should be fine to go, if I am not wrong. So at minute 28 we are continuing with this. And wait, let me make the marker. Meanwhile, something kind of impressive now is that because I don't have my hands, both of my hands occupied, I can write faster than before. So amazing to have this new microphone also for that reason. But anyways, stream start, and there it is. There we have the new marker, and now properly let us start with this.
He was so good social convention. He would smile, he would chat with you, but if what you're talking about depended on remembering something from 3 sentences ago in any detail, gone. Okay, just seconds, unless he's practicing without doing anything else. Yeah.
He did have the capability to learn procedurally. So
yes.
Wait. I remember. This is the part where the teacher said start to ask questions. So what was also talked about was this particular case that happened on MIT, of this guy who had not a memory loss, rather an incapacity of generating new memories. I don't know if it was categorized as memory loss or not. So yeah, Basically that. And let me try to get back enough so that we can trace where it starts. But because I think there are going to be some things that
Finish
I
the
might
story.
be missing about
And he
that.
would tell you like about. So,
Let me see.
what would you like
The
to know about
start
a
of
man
the
like a dictionary in the 1950s?
here it is.
So,
Here it is. The start of the
So now, what would you like to know about a man like
ask me stuff.
Yeah.
Obviously, you couldn't remember something that happened like 2 hours ago, but if you're having a conversation with them, would he not remember what you guys were talking about, or could he remember what the context of the conversation?
Right. So you're saying he wouldn't remember something 2 days ago, but you're talking with him. What's that like, right? So let me give you one experimental thing and then the next. So one experiment they did is they left him with something like 6 numbers, okay, well within the span, and said, remember these numbers. And it could be, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Well, that wouldn't work so well. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. They leave the room for 15 minutes. They come back in. He's an excellent subject. He's going 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. What were the numbers? 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. They go, that's excellent. Was there any trick you did to do that, or did you just? They go, what were the numbers? Okay. As soon as a thought is out of his forefront of his mind, it's gone. Okay. So yeah, he would not recognize us if we spent many hours with him. A striking thing, which was amazing at first, and then sometimes irksome if you work with him, and he was a delightful guy, was that he would tell you a story from his past, and he didn't have a huge array of stories because they were all from a long time ago. And he would tell you like about a gun collection he had, and he would tell you he had 3 guns, and they had this property and that property. He'd finish the story, and if you just stay quiet for a moment, he would forget that he told you the story, but it would be vaguely on his mind because he just told it to you. And he would say to you, hey, did I tell you about my gun collection? And he would tell you almost verbatim the same story. You just wait a moment. He forgot that he told you the story, but it's kind of slightly on his mind because he just told you it. And he goes, hey, did I tell you my gun? He could tell you this until you could bear it no longer, okay? So it was kind of amazing how short his short-term memory was. Without this part of the brain, it's just a few seconds. His conversations were okay, but I would call them pretty shallow. I don't know how to put it. When you talk with somebody and you're on the phone and they're doing something else, and you can tell, for him it was a little bit like that. So he had so good social convention. He would smile, he would chat with you, but if what you're talking about depended on remembering something from 3 sentences ago in any detail, gone. Okay, just seconds, unless he's practicing without doing anything else. Yeah.
Okay, I remember that now more properly. The example was, not example, the case was this guy had no capacity of remembering anything else. Not really that much to add, but the interesting things, the whole testing was also very good to see. I had some questions about the whole ethics almost of these experiments and such. I will not even try to negate that they were incredibly interesting to realize, I will guess. But what has me almost perplexed is the notion that this could have been very well not directed towards someone who needed them, but rather to someone who was being analyzed almost as an experiment subject. I think that this guy was at the end of the day. So yeah, on that sense, it was very weird to see it like that. I can't really say that it was bad in any other way, as it still had some other parts to it that were truly impressive. I will try to add, like, all of the different lessons that we end up taking out from such a particular case. Because in my case, one of the few things that I realized was how incredible is the capacity of remembering things that we have, as long as we don't change what is those memories themselves. If we don't try to change the different memories, we will have a hard time remembering anything, but it will still be the same story. While if we have the capacity of creating new memories, sadly what happens is not that simply or older memories wither away, but rather that they end up being changed by what we say in the moment. I wouldn't say for the sake of doing anything new, or for the sake of removing anything, let's say like that. It simply happens that I will observe them as part of, okay, the different memories can keep the same soul behind them, and when you recall a memory, you change those memories. So in a sense, having a bad memory allows you to keep your pre-existing memories alive. Somehow, I can't explain why. I will guess because when we call forth a memory, it happens also that those particular memories need to be supervised, and when you believe that what you are modifying on them is the proper reality, I would say, when you believe that, it also sadly happens that it becomes a completely new, different memory. Or not a completely new, different, but rather a slightly altered new memory of the older memory. And if you remember long enough things so that they end up being changed so much, in this case, we are not talking about the. I don't remember the proper name of it. The guy that had a boat, and that boat was later on changed every single table. So it the same boat or not? I guess something like that, basically. Because I will discuss, or I would argue, if the memories were changed like that, it also means that those memories might as well play a huge role on their own maintenance, as it is necessary for them to be maintained through time. So yeah, I don't know. Interesting. Anyways, now, do I have anything else to say aside from that? No, so far no. Let us continue. Sorry for such a prolonged pause. Hey, hello.
The capability to learn procedurally.
Yes, we're going to come to that. So the question is, did he ever learn that he had other kinds of learning that were amazingly, completely normal in him? Procedural memory, you're absolutely right. And we'll come to that just in about 20 minutes, okay? Exactly right. And if I don't answer that well, make me do that again, okay? But yeah. Yeah, really good question. Was he able to remember that he couldn't remember things? Yes, he knew he had a bad memory. So now the question is, in what sense did he know he had a bad memory? Like, I know I can't draw very well, okay? Amongst many other things I can't do very well. So, you know, if you talk to him, you'd say, yeah, I don't have a good memory, but he's looking at you and he's going like, I don't know where I am, who you are, or what I'm doing. Everything is vague for many, many years. I must have bad memory. Like you would too. It's like a science fiction movie. You woke up, you didn't know who you were, where you were, what you were doing, and you can't remember anything except from the most distant past. You'd go, something is not good with my memory, right? But you're smart, so you would know that. What I don't know is if you woke him up at 2 a.m. and you said, HM, how's your memory? I don't know if he'd go, well, I'm a famous amnesiac. Of course it's terrible, right? You know, I don't know if he knew it as a fact, like we might know about what we're good and not good at, or if he just knew it by constantly being aware that he didn't know anything he ought to know via memory. Does that make sense? Is that, yeah. Anything else about?
What? Wait, what? Wait.
But as a fact, like we might know, go, well, I'm a famous amnesiac. Of course it's terrible, right? You know, I don't know if he knew it as a fact, like we might know about what we're good and not good at, or if he just knew it by constantly being aware that he didn't.
What? What an amazing question that is. How did this guy know? And I will hope this the professor is talking about what they experimented on. Like they woke him up, and instantly as he was waking up, they asked that question. What? Is it really that? Not that it isn't amazing, but rather it truly gets born. That is the real question. Where is it born from? Because having a new notion inside of you, I guess, would be truly amazing. I will guess. What a shocking shocking thing, man. Wow. I will say no. I can't make sense out of it, because if it was that he somehow was processing stuff when he was asleep, it will make sense that somehow he could remember more things later on his life. But yeah, I mean, also the other question of if he has the capacity of learning or not still needs to be answered. So yeah, I might as well simply continue. I don't know. It truly seems amazing, man. How is it that he was able to know about something like that? What? Truly a good thing to see.
Know anything he ought to know via memory. Does that make sense? Is that, yeah. Anything else about? Yeah.
Explain like scientific consent to.
Oh, it's a very interesting question. Informed consent. You know, yeah. Technically, he was conserved by the state once his family had passed away. But his intelligence was fine, so you had to be a little bit careful to do it right. But you could tell him, we're going to experiment, we're going to test your memory for words. Is that okay with you? And he'd say yes. Of course, if you had him read a 12-page document, by the time he got to page 12, but you could talk him through it.
Wait. Amazing and hellish. Yeah, I guess it isn't really good to hold things so much to that sense. But yeah, I mean, probably in the case of this guy, it seemed good that he had such a short memory because in his personal case, his previous memories weren't overall so negative. But yeah, I mean, not having memory will be bad, but there is also something to consider. He still had some previous memories from his life. I think it was something like 30 years or so before losing the capacity of generating new memories. So it isn't like he never experienced anything new. It was rather that he found himself on the same place as the last memory that was created on his mind, let's say 5 years ago or something like that. And in that sense, it is positive that he didn't have any negative memories, or not an overall higher amount of negative memories against positive memories. Because if not, in that moment, it will probably happen that his whole life will become incredibly sad. But also, something that gets missed is probably how his ways of thinking were and work. Because how can you remember that you are trying to go from one memory to another if it also requires you to have in your mind the knowledge of a previous memory that you wanted to move on, the knowledge that you are moving from one memory to another, and the knowledge of a third memory? I don't know. In a sense, yeah, he probably was truly incapable of operating to a minimum level, but still, he existed, let's say like that. He didn't end his existence because of it, or his existence wasn't negated like I guess it is an even worse state, but a vegetative state. So it is sad, yes, but it will be worse to be on something like that, I think. And yeah, I don't know. It still feels sad because on the other side, what we kind of see here, he was more treated like a subject instead of a patient. So yeah, very weird, my man. I don't know why would I try, if I would ever treat somebody like that, but at the very least it serves like a lesson, let's say, where you see that being so cold with whoever you're treating is kind of bad, So yeah, I don't know. Hey, play. Hello.
The intelligence was fine. You could worry about the edges if they're, so I think the investigators, felt an extra ethical thing also not to ask him to do anything that a person might say no to. He was a wonderful participant, but there was an extra responsibility for the reason you're saying. Yeah.
Does that mean he's happy all the time?
Is he happy all the time? Excellent question. He was a very sort of mellow, well, you could think for a moment whether having no memory would make you happy or sad. So he couldn't hold a job, he couldn't sustain a human relation because he would never know he met you before. Those are things we often think is pretty big in our happiness, the kind of the work we do in some broad sense and the people we relate to, right? And those were all gone for him. On the other hand, he didn't exactly realize that. He didn't realize he didn't work. He didn't realize he didn't have relations he might be expected to have because he'd forget that about as fast as he could think about it. He was kind of a very, I would say, mild, happy person. So there's three possibilities that cross my head, and scientifically we can never figure them out. One of them is, maybe just he was that way. I mean, some people are just mellow and happy, right? They don't have, without amnesia. Second possibility is he had removed also the amygdala. We'll talk about that later in the course. That's a structure that's pretty important for some aspects of emotion and feeling. So that could have been relevant. The third one is, but this is kind of getting to your question, which is intuitively, I feel like this. Again, this is not science, but just a feeling, that what makes us mostly sort of happy or sad? For me, it's mostly relatively recent things that went well or didn't go well, or things, things I'm sad about recently, and things on my horizon, things I'm worried about or things I'm looking forward to. Is that good? And you guys might be different, but I don't get that worked up these days about second grade, all right? At the time, I'm sure I was pretty emotional about stuff. So if you think about him, he doesn't remember anything kind of recent that was good or bad. He doesn't remember anything coming up that's interesting or threatening or risky or unpleasant. So he lives in this constant now. People tell you live in the moment. Nobody could have lived more in the moment than he did. Okay, it's impossible to live more in the moment when the previous moment you can consult is from 30, 40 years ago. Okay, so yeah, he was pretty happy and a pretty pleasant guy. I don't think most of us want that life, although he's probably happier than many people who have all their memories, right? One thing he's the opposite of, just to remind you, is we talked about it now, but just to make it clear, he's the opposite of television amnesia. What happens in soap opera and murder movies when somebody gets bonked, or comedy shows when they get bonked on the head? In television amnesia, they forget who they are and where they came from, right? And then they marry the worst enemy or something like this to make the story go forward, right? That's television amnesia. But after that, they're kind of fine, right? They're kind of operating, but they just forgot where they come from. Okay, that we never see after brain injuries. We never see a person who forgets who they are, but gets around finding the world. HM is the opposite. He remembers stuff from before, but he can't learn new things. Opposite of TV amnesia, right? Is that okay? Any other questions about HM? Yeah.
Okay, here. I will say probably, yeah. What this guy pointed out is the most, or one of the most important factors here. The average person shouldn't be so distant with everybody. Maybe in a sense it was kind of a benefit if this guy was somehow a kind of antisocial type of human, but it's trying to give more credit where it's due. Based on the words of a teacher, I will guess that really the amygdala played a huge role on the part of his interest on socializing. So I will try to attribute that as something also very important on the fact of if it is sad or not, I guess. Or I would really try to say. I would on the other hand get questions like, but if there was a possible way to truly measure the amount of, let's say, chemicals that were distributed among his brain, like to quote-unquote properly measure all of the activity that was going on inside of there, could we see that this guy was particularly good, was particularly better, was exactly like others, more? I don't know. Some testings were realized. Some others really do seem that they were not performed or something like that. I don't know, my man. I wouldn't say it like that. I guess simply the professor didn't remember to talk about them. I don't know. But yeah, at the least, that was a more direct response to our question if this guy was happy or not. Somehow, yes, he was. Short answer. Somehow. Wait, even although he knew he was, or he had an incredibly bad memory, he was happy. So yeah, what? I don't know. Incredibly crazy to see that. Wait, no, wait. I am going to miss this question probably, but how can he know that he has something going on with him while at the same time not get affected by it? Like, if you can only remember what already exists inside of you, how is it that you tend to not go into the negative things? Like, one of the few theories, for example, that I remember is the point of we have inside of us almost a proclivity towards being negative, something that gets told a lot of times in therapy, when in reality, this guy was kind of the opposite. He only had the things that he already knew about to explore. He didn't have the possibility of thinking about anything else new. What an incredible human this guy was. The more you think about it, the more interesting it becomes, because, for example, in a sense, I don't think it proves. It was simply one case, but it allows to the possibility of maybe it isn't really that much of a problem that we have inside of us knowledge about our past, and that is why we get sad. Rather, it really boils down, sadly in this case, to the capacities that each individual holds over the control of their emotions and their responses to those memories, I will say. And even more, the incredible creation of new narratives that are born from those particular memories. like let's say like this, tangling what you already know with new more emotions and making yourself feel like you end up being in an incredibly much more worse situation than what you actually are, as it ends up, I wouldn't simply say showing, but it ends up more like proving that you are not in a bad situation. Simply you're making that situation worse by analyzing it from a biased perspective, let's say like that. And yeah, I don't know. Incredible in that sense, truly incredible. And I still also, for example, have the possibility of asking, how is it that any human being of he was 30 years old or more is capable of surviving in the sense of not going back to those already created narratives? How is it that he didn't find himself surrounded by those things? I guess, in a sense, probably that is the highest state that any human could hold of what we could try to call distraction. He will probably simply see a butterfly and he will instantly lose his mind or his focus on what he was thinking about a second ago, because the butterfly ends up taking so much importance that it becomes unavoidably the next topic at hand, let's say. So yeah, I don't know. Very amazing. Very amazing to really see and to try and analyze the case of this guy. What a crazy thing, my man.
Yes, and let me talk a little bit about that. If I don't answer that, let me know. So let me talk about this. This sort of touches on this loss of already known information, okay? If I don't answer you well, just put your hand up again, okay? So how do we it's easy to test learning new things because you can give somebody something in the laboratory, you see if they learn it. Knowing things they should have known from before is much harder. Different people know different things, right, in the past. So here's how they test it, and here's a thing that people have discovered, which is people are pretty unknowledgeable.
Hello, Teresias, welcome. Well, once again, learning, welcome.
Mostly about faces of people who were famous at the time they were famous. But if you're like 20, you don't know people who were famous before you were born, mostly. There's some exceptions, okay? So they take faces from different decades, and they show you them, and they ask you, do you know who this is? So do you know who this is? This is Lindbergh. Frank Sinatra. Bob Hope. Does that name even ring a bell? I know, this is totally, however old you are, is totally how you do on this test. Lyndon Baines Johnson, President of the United States after Kennedy. Douglas MacArthur, the general. This you might. Richard Nixon. McCarthy, like this is McCarthyism. Golda Meir. Elvis.
What?
Okay. Okay, now. If you pretend you became amnesic, pretend you're old enough to become amnesic in 1990. Does this give you a feeling? Would you know this face? If you're in 1990? Let's make it 1980, let's make it simple. 1980? No. Okay. Would you know this face? No, not okay. But you know them now, okay? So that tells you that you can put names to decades, faces to decades roughly. You know, 1980, only Barack Obama's family knew Barack Obama's face, right? And now we all do. So, okay. So, temporally limited retrograde amnesia. So this is how well you do. Higher is better, and decades, right? So 1960, here's HM. So here's faces that were famous in the 20s, 30s, and 40s before he became amnesic, and he's pretty normal. These are public faces, and then he's terrible for the 50s and 60s after his amnesia. So his memory for faces from the past is pretty normal. His memory for faces from the onset of amnesia forward is terrible. Is that okay? Does that answer your question reasonably? Okay. But here's another really weird thing that people have observed in many cases.
I had something that was kind of missed is, but he had any capacity of remembering any of the new face? Like, I don't know. I hope it gets explained if he can really learn stuff or not.
Understand, but it's been observed in many cases. So here's another patient. He was a bus driver in Washington, D.C. He moved to work in a drugstore in Boston, then a mattress factory in Boston. Then he was hospitalized at the Boston VA in November 1965 with a huge hematoma in the right temporal parietal, big bleeding, and he was pretty aphasic and stuporous. He couldn't answer questions. In a month, he's digit span and short-term memory returns. He states the date as approximately something like September 1965. He has a severe interrogative amnesia. For example, he fails to learn the names of the nurses he sees every day. But when asked, this is the striking thing. He says, interrogating when asked, where do you live? He says, I live in Washington with certainty, as if he lost all these memories from before. By March, he starts to learn the nurse's name. He's recovering his memory capacity. He couldn't remember that he moved to Boston, but he doesn't fight the idea that he lives in Boston. Then he remembers he worked at a drugstore. Then he remembers that he worked at a mattress factory. And by the time he's discharged, it's only the last 24 hours before he went into the hospital he's lost. So two things. There's a coupling between the anterograde amnesia and the retrograde amnesia. He can't learn new things, but he lost old things. And as the anterograde amnesia resolves, the retrograde amnesia resolves in some sense in temporal order. It's really odd, but it's been observed many times. So there is some link between what the hippocampus does and memory for the past. Now, in some ways, it's really hard to study these things in detail in a patient like HM, but in some other patients give us another perspective, although every one of these examples is not quite perfect. Here's patients who undergo treatment for...
My brother, what? What? What is a perfect patient, my man? What is a perfect sample? Anyways, the very least you have more than one example to analyze. I don't know.
Convulsive therapy, and appropriately, in movies like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, wrongly used electroconvulsive therapy is wrong. For some patients with severe depression who fail to respond to medications and who have suicidal ideation, who literally attempt to take their lives or talk a lot about it in a believable way to family and physician, electroconvulsive therapy can be very helpful. It's a hard choice to make and a complicated one. Here's what happens. Patients typically go in, it varies, but they go in for the electroconvulsive therapy. And nowadays it's done typically only in the right hemisphere. In this study done some years ago, around 1972, it was bilateral. They put electrodes on both sides of the brain, they pass current, and they induce a seizure. And they do that something like every second day for about 10 days. It's a very aggressive form of treatment, certainly. But for some patients, the depression just lifts, and they're no longer talking about taking their lives.
How many, my man?
For some people, it seems to work when other things don't.
How many?
During the course of the treatment, these patients develop an anterograde amnesia. They become HM-like. While they're in the hospital, they become...
What is the percentage before and after? Let me try to interpret this. What? Okay, I can't understand this. Before and after. This means that they had a drop. This represents a drop. What is this? I can't understand it, my man. I am thankful that you said for some. I can't understand it. How much is some? Yeah, I guess in a sense, yeah. Seizures are brain resets because also they, the proper type of them gets the whole brain activated, and because of that, it induces a real reset, as it has to shut down first, and after that has to initiate everything slowly. And yeah, in a sense, they are really a reset. But what gets missed here is the proper explanation about, okay, how much or how many people can really take an advantage of getting a seizure, because the problem is also neurons are so incredibly fragile that when you have a seizure, you kill them, even if it is an induced and a professionally induced one, because the sensibility and the integrity of a neuron is based on milliseconds, not on seconds, on milliseconds. So sometimes if you start to lose, let's say, brain energy or electrical waves on some parts of the brain, they get instantly deleted and they need to be reconstructed in ways in which probably you have to utilize neuroplasticity instead of creating new brain cells. Because I think, if I don't remember incorrectly, brain cells are one of the few things that also stop getting formed. Like, for example, when it happens, okay, when you reach 25 years old, you stop producing new brain cells, supposedly. So yeah, it is a whole combination of things that need to be going correctly. If you had a seizure and you can completely recuperate or gain anything from it. So yeah, it is interesting at the very least, but I don't know, very tilted to see. Oh yeah, some people. How many, my man? How many? I can understand your graphic here. How many people? And also, I know that n equals 16 is the amount of patients. At the very least, I know that. So, how many people? We need to expand the, I don't know, it gets weird sometimes.
HM-like. They can't learn new things. They forget the nurses. You can test
Neuroplasticity is lovely. Yeah. I mean, incredibly lovely. I guess the only the only crazy thing is to learn how to trigger neuroplasticity, but after doing so, the rest of the ride becomes incredibly enjoyable. So yeah, if you can, please do so. You literally gain things only from doing it. No loss. So yeah, please.
And so Larry Squire did the following experiment with these kinds of patients. So we don't know that it's the hippocampus that's the critical thing in these patients, but it look a lot like HM. And we know that the hippocampus has a low seizure threshold. That's why it occurs so often as the locus of epilepsy. So what they did is they took television shows. Now, this is another world than you can possibly imagine. I grew up in a world where there were basically 3 television stations. And you're feeling sad for me already, right? And so everybody knew what was on those 3 television stations. Right? But they took shows that weren't very successful, that were on for 1 season only. Okay, so they weren't super popular, but a lot of people saw them, and there were only 3 television stations, networks and stations. So what they did is they tested them on these events or other things like that before they had ECT. So this is their knowledge before they had ECT. Of course, they remember recent things, 1971, better than stuff from years ago. Okay, like we all do. But the striking thing is when these patients got ECT during the course of their amnesia, they only lost memory for TV shows from the last 2 years. They didn't lose this memory. These are the very same patients before they got ECT and while they're getting ECT. They lose memory only for the last 2 years of TV shows and not all the other ones. Or same thing you can do with famous public events. So this is what people call a temporally limited retrograde amnesia. It goes back for some years of knowledge you already had. And here's the amazing thing. When these patients go home, their memory largely comes back, and so does their knowledge of the TV shows. It's as if
Well, I mean, a big majority of this also has to be explained or gets explained when you also see people suffering from blockages on their memory by trauma. Yeah, I don't know, very, very interesting. But yeah, also, yes, let me tell you, I tried to, not that I tried, I searched for it, I read a bit. I had some problems because I only found a subreddit. I don't know if there was something else that I had to check. Yeah, not to. Sorry if it feels like I am putting the blame on you, but I simply put on my browser oneirosophy and it directed me to a subreddit about it. So I had to guess that I needed to see there. And yeah, it seemed interesting. It seems like, not it seems, it asks about some concepts that are also explained on other fields. Because, for example, one of the main things is the understanding that I think it was Freud who talked about it. You can do something similar to what oneirosophy tries to talk about when you enter a real state of conversation with your different selves, in a sense in which you interrogate your different personalities. That is how Freud talks about it. It is incredibly interesting. Maybe we can try to analyze that later, but I will have to remember about it. But yeah, it is onto something. It is also, yes, true to a certain extent. I will say probably one of the few problems that it has is it holds too much superstition above it. But yeah, they are incredible. Incredible. It has potential. Dreams are windows, and dreaming is hell. Yeah, I mean, let's say like this: dreaming can be hell, but it can also feel like heaven, because is this neuroplasticity? What? How do you know about neuroplasticity? No. Hello, right now we're talking about oneirosophy. we are simply discussing and analyzing different concepts so far. We talked a little bit about neuroplasticity, but it was a little bit. But yeah, let me properly respond to you, Pometiap. It happens that dreams have the attribute of being changed. The problem is we lack proper training in our daily lives to see it as something that you can use instead of something that you simply experience. Because one of the main ways in which you can change how you interact with your dreams and even more with those who repeat in your whole dreaming state is by developing proper ways to deal with those situations. But if you do not take your time, or nobody even tries to tell you that it is possible to analyze it in such a way that it makes sense out of nowhere and you find solutions, it gets incredibly boring and incredibly also hard to properly find ways in which dreaming is enjoyable and becomes truly enjoyable. You have too much training. Like what? Too much only philosophy training. I don't know. You do, I guess. But yeah, that's all. Let me drink some water. So good at it. Well, I mean, maybe if you're good at it, you can also start to train now. I mean, my man, the probably of the probability of increasing your capacities is always incredibly good. And yeah, also, you shouldn't train, you should care as Gurun does. My man. Lucid dreaming is boring. No, yeah, I would guess it is boring. And also, supposedly, lucid dreaming isn't as beneficial for your health as simply dreaming is. So, it also isn't that good. Don't worry. Here we hate some lucid dreaming. No, no, we don't hate anything so far, I think. But yeah, we were here talking about shocks, and yeah, all of this was very interesting. Let's see.
It's in their brain. They don't have access to it for the last.
You don't have what? Wait, how is it that you don't have dreams? I remember one of the few explanations is probably one of the main reason for somebody to not have dreams is if your sleeping pattern is altered enough. When you go to sleep, either you're too tired and you only have to rest, and because of that, the rest of the brain connections and similar things also get completely disrupted to a degree to which you also don't properly integrate different memories. Let's say damaging thing. Or on the other side, if you somehow take there are obviously some substances and drugs that can inhibit the proper process of dreaming. Like, I know that the most popular one is marijuana in that sense. If you smoke marijuana, you lose a lot of capacities of dreaming, because I think it has something to do with THC blocking the way in which the what was it? Endorphin? No. Dopamine? No. Melatonin, I think it was, or some of those. The one that is related to dreaming, doesn't get produced, and yeah, it has multiple causes, but know that you can work on it, man. No real worries. And I don't know. I wouldn't, in my case, trade my sleeping, my dreaming. I mean, you can make it beneficial, and you can also learn how to take benefits out of it, even if you have nightmares, I will say. Oniric travel to other people's dreams. I remember only once I had the possibility of somehow observing what somebody was dreaming, but it feels also surreal, because in a sense you are interacting with what other people is dreaming, and the ways in which their whole realities get conformed is truly weird, let's say, because maybe it has to do also with the way in which you don't realize that your whole world doesn't exist in a dream. You only exist on what you see. Like, let's say, you play Minecraft, okay? In Minecraft, you have a certain amount of chunks loaded around of you, only that. So the same things happens with other people's dreams. They only have a certain amount of chunks loaded. The rest is literally empty, or incredibly devoid of any real quality. So yeah, it is weird to see how others dream, if you can do it.
2 years of information, but it's still sitting there, and they regain that access. 2 more examples on this. So here's an example. Because with humans, it's always tough, so they do the same thing with monkeys. With monkeys, they could do, create a surgical lesion like HM and train them on material. They knew exactly what they learned. Here's they had the surgery, either 2, 4, 8, or 12, or 8, 16 weeks. And you can see the monkeys with the hippocampal damage were performing poorly if they learned the material 2 or 4 weeks ago, but not 8 or 16 weeks ago. Again,
You're always you. I mean, I think when you dream disembodied things, or in general, you have dreams about being other things, it ends up being kind of preoccupying. Because it talks about wishes most of the time, about changing and so on and so forth. So it is good, I will say. It is very nice to not have to worry about being on something else that isn't you. Incredibly nice.
Temporally limited retrograde amnesia. So we're getting the idea that the hippocampus is important not only for forming new memories, but, and this is kind of wild, it's still important for you to remember stuff from a week ago, a month ago, and a couple of years ago. And it takes years for your memory to become independent, or what people call consolidated, so that it no longer depends upon the hippocampus. All right? The hippocampus both is required to form a new memory, and it seems like it's necessary to remember that memory, from months to years before that memory becomes independent of the hippocampus. So right now in you, it's as if you had a neurochemistry team finishing your memories, from the end of 8th grade. Okay, we're done. We're moving on to 9th grade, okay? Because it takes years for your hippocampus to no longer be required to get those memories that you acquired years ago. And the same thing, they did these famous faces, like the ones I showed you before, so they had to be somewhat older people. Here's activation in the 1990s. If they were looking at famous faces and the experiment was done in the late 1990s, so recent faces, hippocampus turned on, but not for the 80s, 70s, or 60s, or 50s, or 40s. Again, is that the hippocampus were required to retrieve memories that's in the rest of your brain for some time period, but then after much time passes, it's no longer required. This is just summarizes those things. So now, Tyler, if we could do the...
Here, wait. I think something that also has to deal with all of trying to combine what we were talking about with before in this is one of the few concepts that still has to deal with both memory and dreaming. Is you can also dream about what you experienced a lot of time ago, because you can also bring those memories back as they are also consolidated more, as he said. In a sense, you have a hard time dreaming about actual situations most of the time. And in reality, one of the few things that is related to dreaming in that sense is that you are probably detecting patterns or something similar of that sort when you dream about something that is happening about now. Because most of the time, you can only remember in your dreams things that are completely out there, like those truly dreams, let's say, in which you also create structures and similar things that are made out of pieces of your own memories. And on the other hand, you are creating the narrative that is related to events that you already saw before and that you are now exploring again, let's say. That is why it is also hard sometimes to properly experience dreams that are about the most recent thing, if it is completely recent, let's say. But also, in a sense, it also gets broken because if you have such an not beautiful, in the sense of such an incredibly dense experience, it also becomes truly cemented on your memory, let's say. And if you have that memory for long enough times, not for long enough. If durates long enough, you can remember it more clearly than almost anything else. But it also has to deal with your emotions and so on and so forth. So yeah, I don't know, very, very crazy, I will say. And yeah, narratives. There it is. So now let us continue a little bit, I guess. I have no more water. It is incredible. This is so sad.
So we're going to show you an amnesic patient. Most amnesic patients are like this man. Very intelligent, very verbal, not dramatic, but with terribly impaired memory.
No, no, this is so sad. I fucking sorry.
So last part of the talk is I'd like to talk back to this idea of memory systems and procedural memory, the idea that you're a symphony of neural systems that learn different things. So your brain is like the university, right? Department of Chemistry, Department of Biology, Department of Brain Cognitive Science, or Economics. In you are multiple very specialized learning circuits that are good for learning different things. So the idea of a memory system, a particular part of your brain that has a particular learning process. And a key concept in that is, so far we've been talking about what people would normally call memory, explicit or direct testing. You know, what did you study? What year is it? You're asked directly to do something. But another way to show memory and learning is through changes in performance with practice. So people will sometimes call the first kind declarative memory, where you directly have conscious memory about facts and episodes. You know that, you know something, like that something occurred. And then the other kind we'll talk about now, procedural memory, accessible only through performance and knowing how. Now with these kinds of skill learning or procedural memory, we see how people get better when they practice. Getting better is a change in your behavior that's learned, and a change in your brain that performs the superior performance. So here's the experiment, and that was the original one Brendan Milner did with HM, where you have to trace a star in a mirror. You see your hand in the mirror, but you don't have direct view of your hand. Have any of you done something like this for some odds and ends reason? Anybody? Sometimes. Do I see a hand? No. Okay. It's surprisingly hard. The horizontals and verticals are pretty easy. The diagonals, as you move your hand, you go, oh, it's no problem. I just reversed everything. And you see your hand just drift the wrong way, okay? And you go, okay, no, 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 no. I just have to, go 45 degrees different, and I can do it. I mean, you're controlling your hand, but then you move again, and it still goes the wrong way. And so at first, you make lots of mistakes. We understand this because you have such automaticity between what you see and how you move all the time, that the mirror reverse, you have to overcome that automatic relationship. So first, you make a lot of mistakes and move slowly. You practice, you get better. Here's the remarkable thing with HM. So here's HM. Each of the
I mean, this wasn't. Was this explained before and did I miss it or something? I mean, my man. The act of consciously realizing how you work makes you lose certain kinds of capacities about how you deal with those problems. It is the same as when we struggle with, for example, they were pretty popular memes like manual breathing activated, or now you feel your tongue in your mouth and similar stuff like that, because you start to be aware about that, and you commonly don't have control over those things because they are automated and everything gets done by your brain and yourself. There is no real need for you to interact with that. Not simply interact, also make an effort for them to keep going, let's say. The same as with, for example, salivation, breathing, I mentioned that already, moving the hand in a very specific manner, and moving the fingers, and also blinking, and so on and so forth. All of those things are directed by completely almost independent parts of the brain that only follow a rough sketch about what you want to do. That is why, in that same sense, if you want to really learn how to properly draw what you envision, you have to also create in yourself adaptation towards the capacity of properly drawing the lines, drawing any kind of paintings, and properly putting into an existing canvas, let's say, what you are envisioning. If not, it becomes impossible for anybody to simply do it. It seems rather simple, but the development of those tools is incredibly hard, and that is why they also are progressive, because they need a lot of time to be created. But yeah, I don't know why it wasn't explained more deeply. But I mean, I don't know.
These dots is the next time he does it consecutively, he gets better from doing it over and over again. That's not a shock. Here's a shock. He comes the next day, he keeps the learning he had, and he gets better. He comes in day 3, he keeps the learning. Now, for him, a day is like infinity, okay, for memory. When he comes in the room, he says, what do I do with this? You go, well, we did it the last 2 days, don't you know? He said, no, I have no idea. Have you done this before? No. You can give him multiple choice of different things he might have done. He'll pick the wrong thing. When you come in on day 3 and you're this good, you're pretty proud, in fact, vain, okay? You're going like, I can do this, I'm awesome, just let me at it, right? Okay? Because you know that you did it. You know how good you are through practice. He has no idea, but his learning is entirely normal. Not just better than you think, just as good as you. So a memory system in his brain, a different one than the hippocampus, has kept that memory, uses that memory, and the amazing thing is means that that's also true in you, as far as we understand these things, okay? When you learn a physical or mental skill, A lot of it is learned in a way that has nothing to do with your memory that you learned the skill. It's all by doing. And it doesn't depend on the hippocampus. And some years later, I sort of did this again a little bit. Here's his performance first, second, third day, a week later, 2 weeks later, and a year later. Complete retention for a man who can forget within moments, a year later, a skill. He forgets that he did it ever within moments. So another.
Okay, here, let me put a pause here. I mean, I will guess it is expected for things like that to happen. In a sense, the complexity that your different systems in the body develop, as long as you are developing them consciously, end up constantly evolving, or at the very least, staying in the same place. If you are not using something, it degrades. In a sense, almost that. What was explained before about the brain. A lot of skills are created and are maintained through time. They do not are born inside of you and you're simply retrieving more from that. No. The brain needs to be stimulated and the physical parts of your body also need to be stimulated. And for example, one of the few things that I can properly remember is a trained artist, somebody who has spent around 1,000 hours, has different connections for the creative part on his brain than an average person, as they have developed so much the understanding about what they are doing that in a certain way things end up almost feeling or becoming directly automated for them. So yeah, I mean, it is incredible, but it isn't so easy or so simple as what it seems at first. I don't know. There it is. Crazy. Let's say it like that.
Kind of task that people do, same idea. Motor skill you can use is called rotary pursuit. There's a disc like this that revolves around a platter that turns pretty fast. Your job is to maintain contact between. This was sort of sad before video games, right? This is about as interesting as 1940s games got. Okay. It is whizzed around, and it's fast enough that it's not easy to do. And at first, your hand goes off it, but with practice, you get really good at revolving with a rotating disc. And HM and patients like him learned that very well. Another motor skill. So who's bad at learning this? Which part of the brain is your instrument for learning skills to practice? So our best evidence comes from patients with a very difficult disease called Huntington's disease. That's a genetic rare disease. Its onset is in the 30s or 40s. These patients get severe motor problems and movement problems. Then over time, cognitive ones and psychiatric ones. There's no treatment for it. So this is the caudate withering away in a patient with Huntington's disease compared to a healthy person's post-mortem. Or if you look at an MRI, here's your basal ganglia. Here's the withered away basal ganglia in the patients with Huntington's disease. And there's a brief, Tyler, there's a brief video of a patient with early stage Huntington's disease.
Oh yeah, ha 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 ha.
So it's not the most severe problem they have, but when they do one of these motor kinds of tasks, here's normal, typical people learning a motor task, getting better on it. It's good to be high on this graph. Here's the patients with Huntington's disease showing no learning at all. And this is a task that an amnesic patient would learn normally. So very convincing. And you could say, well, they have a motor problem, they're not going to get a motor skill. So one thing they do is they make the platter or the turn very slowly. So at the beginning, they're doing just as well, and they still show no learning at all.
I mean, something also that happens and that exists inside of this group of problems is the realization that most of these things also have to deal with the capacity of properly proving to yourself that you can do it. In a sense, I understand why it is hard to find people like that, but people with Parkinson also have a hard time learning about new things because your body doesn't function in ways in which you want it to work. So it ends up becoming almost a painful thing to do. And in some other cases, I remember, it also differs. I have heard about people who have all the capacities of performing pretty particular tasks, although they have Parkinson. Like, for example, one of the most amazing cases that I learned about was this, I think it was something like 70 years old surgeon, and this guy had literally shaking hands all the time. But somehow when he was existing on operating grounds. He was capable of holding his pulse as steady as literal iron. It was incredible to watch that. And the best thing, you wouldn't have believed that that guy had those capacities. It was an old guy, and it was literally shakier than a fucking mixing machine. So yeah, I don't know. It's tough.
So there's a lot of other evidence sparked by this that it just shows that the basal ganglia is an instrument that's essential for us to learn physical or motor skills, perceptual skills, and a variety of cognitive skills as well. Things where we practice to become excellent. Basal ganglia is doing a lot of that work for you. The last kind of learning I'll talk to you about in the last disease is...
Wait. This lowest point isn't as lowest. This point, yeah, is low, but isn't as lowest as this or this or this last point. Huh?
That work for you. The last kind of learning I'll talk to you about in the last disease is a sort of odder form of learning called repetition priming. It's a change in performance because of something you did recently. And if I give you a concrete example, it will feel better. So here's one of many examples. Imagine you study a list of words like stamp, landmark, speed, clock. You study a list of words like these. I can give you an explicit or declarative memory test. What words did you see? You'd recall them. Or which word did you see? That would be multiple choice. That's regular memory. We know it depends on the hippocampus. I can also give you a weird test like this, which says, tell me the first word you think of that starts with STA. Now, if you have good memory, you'll go, do you want me to give you stamp? Okay, is that the point? And you go, no. And then you go, oh, it's a Freudian thing. You want to know some weird things I'm going to think of. And you go, no, just tell me the first word you think of, okay? And you can give many answers that are all perfectly fine. You can give stall, stand, staccato, star, right? Many STA words. They're picked, and all of them are fine. That's all you have to do. But if you saw a stamp, one particular completion of this, about 10 minutes ago, you're biased or primed to come up with that word. Not all the time, but much more than by chance. A recent experiences biases you to behave in a certain way. And here's the remarkable thing. When you do this experiment with HM, if you just had the list of words and you wait about 20 seconds, here's your recall. Now you're not surprised that recall from a healthy person is about 7 words, right? You tried that yourself. HM, sadly, has no score because he always goes like, what list, okay? So no recall. Multiple choice recognition, where there are 3 choices. Here's typical people, HM, about chance. The probability above chance that you give stamp as the completion to STA if you saw stamp. If I showed you star, probably you give star. The specific word you saw 10 minutes ago, perfectly the same in HM as normal control subjects. He is just as influenced by that word he saw 10 minutes ago as you are to give you that answer, okay? So this got people very excited because they said, now we can experimentally and scientifically study something that Freud talked about as a very vague idea, the cognitive unconscious. He's not conscious that he saw a list of words 10 minutes ago, but it's making him choose to behave in a certain way now. Now you have both things in you as far as we understand it. You can both remember you saw the word list, but if you switch your thinking a little bit, your behavior a little bit, the unconscious system gets into the driver's seat, right? Because the people with good memory were giving stamp often, but no more or less than HM. So unconscious. So what part of the brain does this kind of memory? And our insight to that comes from Alzheimer's disease. So the disease, HM's kind of amnesia, extremely rare. Huntington's quite rare. Alzheimer's is tragically common. In fact, they went to East Boston, the area near Logan, and knocked on doors of people's homes, okay, not people in nursing homes, at home, and they estimated, and there's debates about this, back and forth, but about half the people over 85 who answered the door qualified for a diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease. About half, okay, over 85. There's debates about this. There's debates about whether all of us would get it if we live long enough. But as American society gets older, as us baby boomers all move into our 60s, 70s, and 80s, there's going to be a heck of a lot of people around with Alzheimer's disease. And it's some of you probably have experienced this with grandparents, if nothing else. It's a very devastating disorder for the patient, for the spouse or family. It's a very challenging disorder. So what is Alzheimer's disease? Well, behaviorally, it's an insidious and progressive.
Okay, let's go into something else. There is also being ignored the causes as to why physically Alzheimer's disease might get created. Let's simply say that.
Dementia. Dementia means, unlike HM, it's many losses of abilities. Unlike HM had a surgery one day, boom, that was it. Alzheimer's starts very slowly, it gets worse and worse over time. The biggest problem early on is memory, the most common problem. But over time, language, thinking, concentration, spatial thinking, sometimes mood and personality, all of these get altered over time. In the brain, when you look at the changes, you see that the changes occur, especially in the hippocampal region, so that's why the memory problem is like HM, and also in some other parts of the cortex, but not so much, for example, in basal ganglia that we just spoke about as important for procedural memory. Here's a control brain and an equal-aged Alzheimer's brain. The reason why these gyri, the systolic side widened is because of widespread neuronal shrinkage or death. And what's happening inside the brain, when you look at most postmortem, there's sort of neurofibrillary tangles and plaques that are associated with disease. These tangles are something about the cells that have died. The plaques are thought to be maybe part of the process that leads to the disorder, but there's debate about that to this day. And if you look on postmortem where the tangles are, I'll just the tangles up here, you can see they're most dense in the hippocampus or near the hippocampus, like HM. And so that's why we think so many patients with Alzheimer's have an HM-like memory problem and then more problems after that. So here's a healthy person, top of the brain. Here's the left and right hippocampus, an 81-year-old. And here, an 80-year-old Alzheimer's patient, the hippocampus is withered away, both sides of the brain bilateral. So one more brain perspective on this. This is a SPECT scan that just shows you where there's blood flow and metabolism. Top of the brain, bottom of the brain. Here's the insides of the temporal lobes in a healthy elderly adult. Look how much worse. This is HM. He looks pretty good, right? You have to look really hard to see that the hippocampus is missing because it's such a small structure. And here's an early stage Alzheimer's patient. Lots of the tissues, are, a lot of, it's not functioning, because there's so much damage. Here's the medial temporal lobes, but also cortical areas that are compromised. Okay, again, not the biggest problem, but in terms of thinking about different parts of the brain and what parts of the memory they do. So here's here's amnesic patients, including HM, Alzheimer's patients in green and controls. So recall of the list, what words were on the list? Explicit memory, bad in the two patient groups. Recognition, pretty poor. Word stem completion, the kind of thing that we said is completely normal in HM, that's impaired in Alzheimer's disease. So we think that kind of priming depends on the neocortex, the part of the brain that's also injured in Alzheimer's, because we know it doesn't depend on the hippocampus, because patients with hippocampus-only damage are fine.
My man, that was a fucking big hit. What the fuck? What? What? I don't know. It feels almost sad to see that. My man.
So we end up with a picture like this, and of something, a memory system for explicit or declarative memory. From patients with amnesia, we know it depends on the medial temporal lobe, left verbal, right spatial. For skill learning, anything you practice many times to get better at, we know from Huntington's disease, that depends on the basal ganglia. For kinds of priming, recent experience, altering something about brain organization, Alzheimer's disease, we know from that it's likely mediated by the neocortex. These are from patient studies, but imaging studies are very well aligned with these things. So we think it's true not only of patients, but of you in terms of the instruments of your brain. So now we have not only episodic memory and semantic memory, we talked about procedural memory, we talked about priming. I didn't talk about conditioning today, but we talked about that before. So I have two more slides to add on conceptually. So in what sense was Carl Lashley right or wrong when he said memory is all over the brain? Here's how we think about it now. We think he was right that all of your brain is learning. Practically all of your brain is plastic, it changes with experience, but different parts of your brain are learning different things. The basal ganglia is learning how to be skilled at something, the neocortex how to gain knowledge and shift your representation of knowledge, like in priming. The medial temporal lobe on the left is learning verbal facts, the right is nonverbal facts or spatial facts. So all of your brain is learning, but it's learning different things.
I mean, probably the only kind of problem that gets applied to this, trying to get a mind out of what just happened, is probably the fact that when you are trying to learn something, a myriad of neurons need to activate and even more need to hold those memories. If we develop tools in which we could analyze what kind of memory holds a particular type of neuron, we could trace back a very particular part of a memory, but we don't even, or at least I don't even know how much of neuron space it occupies even a single word. It might be something that breaks down even to simpler concepts, like, for example, even what is simple enough so that one single neuron can hold that memory? What? I don't know. Let's continue.
In that sense, we end up with this metaphor that, just like there's a string section, right, and a percussion section or something like that, in you, there's all these different instruments that are highly tuned to, in the way they're organized to learn all the different things you learn. They're all pretty useful instruments to have. And without these patients and in the imaging studies, we wouldn't have known that. You'd be like the Martian, one instrument, 1,000 instruments. Well, we know there's multiple ones, and we know pretty much which structures are essential for them. Thanks.
Okay, there it is, there we have it. Oh, man. No, yeah. I think I can really say that much. Okay, I have curiosity. have we been developing ways in which we can heal Alzheimer's disease so far? I know that there is ways to prevent Alzheimer, but I don't know if we have developed how to stop the disease itself, or not to stop, to regress the damage that was done by that. I still don't know, man. What an incredibly sad thing. I am not even going to lie. It's what's a almost, I don't know, crazy thing. I would not even want to say it is good to not have it. It is incredibly devastating to be on that state. Let's say that. My man. Anyways, we finished the lesson, so yeah. That's all for now. My god. My man. No, yeah. Let me try to say something good. Like, I don't know, at the very least, we're alive, we were able to learn. And we have the capacity of holding memories inside of our brains so far. So we don't have to worry about spending time meaninglessly, because all the things that we try literally amount to nothing. So yeah, very fine we are, and very good we will keep doing, it seems. And yeah, happiness basically, incredible happiness, my man. I don't know. I think that is how I can try to say so far, my man. Yeah, that's too much. That was too much. It didn't need to be so visual. I would I would have been happier if I simply had, yeah, this happens like this, or similar to this particular thing. I don't know. I might have lived an easy life without knowing such hard stuff, but at the same time, it is necessary to learn all those realities. So yeah, understandable, my man. Thank you for that. Humbling lesson almost, I guess. But yeah, I don't know. What a crazy thing. What a truly crazy thing. Now, I try to not end it so negatively, but I think I can't. We can't recuperate from this fatal blow done to our mental health. My man, get us out of here. Let us arrest someone. This has to end, my man. And also welcome Sukadre. Well, kind of sadly, we're sending a stream, but yeah. My man. It was nice, but yeah. What a crazy discovery. I don't know. Anyways, we need to relax. We need to rest a little bit. We need to distract the mind, man. We need to get out of here. Please, we need to we need to not think about something like this anymore. Man. Let us get out of here. We're going to raid Lady Karos, who is playing Palworld. Yeah. Let us distract ourselves a little bit. My man. What a crazy thing. Anyways, people, as always, thanks for being here. Thanks for everything. Let's see, do we have the bot working? Fucking bot. Anyways, as I wanted to say, thanks for being here. Thanks for everything. Remember to stay safe. Remember to fucking take care of yourself, please. We don't want people with fucking Alzheimer here. What a sad thing. Yeah, let us get out of here. We have an unread message. Come up with something. I don't know. Goodbye, people. Thanks for being here. Thanks for looking. Thanks for watching. Thanks for saying anything. Thanks in particular to Pumatiap, Gurun, Copa, Sukadri, and I guess Tiresias Bazar.